Ever have a nightmare that the New Orleans Saints will be in such dire straits at offensive line that they might be walking down Poydras Street Labor Day weekend, asking people if they want to try out? Hey, you over there, you want to try? Hey, you look like a big dude. Come on over. We got room for you. That's a dream I had last night. Wait, what's that about Ryan Ramczyk? A dream might become a reality. So is it too early to start saying, wait till next year? You know what it's not too early for? It's not too early for the Dattitude podcast. And why is that, you ask? Because it's coming up next.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.
Where you at, New Orleans? And hello to my friends elsewhere, everywhere, out there who have helped the stock of Allegra D shoot up the charts. The allergies, oh my goodness, the allergies. It's piling everywhere. It's all over the cars. It's in my nose. So if I sneeze during the show, you'll know what's going on. You'll be there with me. This is Dattitude, episode number 220 for a Wednesday, March the 27th, 2024. I am your host, Sneezy. Bashful and Doc are off today. Now you know who I am. I am Jim Derry, and whether you're watching on one of our NOLA.com social media channels or listening to the podcast, as always, I thank you for being the show. We remind you, look, today it's just going to be me, so if you want to chime in with your comments as we're going to go along, we're going to have, I don't know if fun's the right word, but we're going to do it a little different today. So feel free to chime in, whether you're watching it on X, YouTube, whether you're watching on Facebook. Just type in your comment. It will show here, and we will bring it up on the screen. Also, a reminder to subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page. Click the little bell to receive notifications where we're going live. It's just nice. You don't have to, but it's Easter weekend. Don't you want to be nice? I don't know. Look, good news at the Derry house before we get started. Mama's coming home tonight. I told you about this on Monday. I was on kid duty all week. No kid has died. So that's first of all, that's good news. She's coming home from a conference in Dallas. The house is not in shambles, except for we did have one little incident where the little one was being a Derry, just doing what Derrys do. She ripped down the curtains in the den. I always wanted more sunlight in there anyway, so we're good to go. But on to sports and why you're here. We're gonna have fun today. First 25 minutes, it's just gonna be me talking about mostly the Saints. I'm gonna give you like 1 minute on the Pels and an update after last night. Oh, brutal. They come back from the dead and then blow it. It's kind of rough. We'll give you an update on that. But again, today is gonna be about Saints. It's gonna be about Dennis Allen's press conference. We are going to dissect this press conference, and obviously we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about Ryan Ramczyk and what this could mean, all kidding aside. It's not a joke. It's really not funny if you're a Saints fan. The Saints, to think that they're worse off than they were before at offensive line is really scary because that was pretty bad. But after that, Spencer the Guru is going to come on in a little bit with the Fantasy Roundup. We're talking mostly baseball and sleepers to look at before the real opening day, which is on Thursday. I mean the real opening day. Forget the Dodgers and the Padres playing in South Korea. I get why they do the international stuff. Look, the NFL does it. It's great for the game, supposedly. I just don't understand how 2 games being played on there the week before the season starts, what it does for the game. But, hey, is it worth the money? Maybe they know the answer to that. We're going to talk about baseball in the Fantasy Roundup. We're also going to talk about baseball in the Extra Point. That is going to be my extra point for the day. We'll talk about that later on. LSU's having their pro day as we speak. I think it's just about over. Jane Daniels was on a little while ago. They were showing him on ESPN. More on that coming on the Saints Insider podcast this afternoon. I think they're going to start at 4 p.m. That's going to be also on most of these same social media channels, also in the Saints, NOLA.com Saints YouTube if you want to check that out. All right. We're going to treat the first 2/3 of this show like a Monday during the season when I have Derry's Dime. We have plenty of clips to go through from Dennis Allen's press conference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a clip, I'm going to run it, and then I'm going to come back and talk about it. And again, I would love for your input. If you want to input, we're doing this live. If you're watching live, all you do is type it in the comment stream. We'll show it and talk about it. I know how many of you just love Dennis Allen out there. And look, this is not going to be a 30-minute bash and Dennis Allen show. I actually have a positive thing to say about him in a little bit. And like I said the other day, whether you hate him, don't care one way or the other, or you like him, and I know there's some people out there that like him, they're just not talking about it. You have to hope that your team does well this year, so which means you want Dennis Allen to do well. Are we hearing anything different early here in the early parts of during the owners meeting? He's talking, and are we hearing a lot of things different? Not really, but he did shed some insight on some things that I think are really important. Again, I want to talk about that coming up. But first, real briefly, before we get to that, I said I wanted to touch on the Pels, and we are. And you see the standings here, and you want to talk about the Saints offensive line. Well, how about the Pelicans? They're coming closer to dire straits in the sense of, look, they're going to probably make the playoffs at the minimum, a play-in game, but they are now only 2 games ahead of Sacramento and Phoenix for that play-in game spot. You don't want to fall to 7. You fall to 7, it's a whole different world. You fall to 7. So this team, which has been on the rise all year long, we talked about this home stretch that's coming up and that they started last night against Oklahoma City. You had a chance to knock off Oklahoma City, which would have been a huge game for you, not only standings-wise, because you would have jumped ahead of the Clippers, which in the grand scheme of things, you still got 4 weeks left. But in the grand scheme of things, what you're talking about, you're now 7 games back at Denver. What the keys are, though, you're still a half a game behind the Clippers, who haven't been playing that great lately either. But you're only a game ahead of Dallas, who walloped Sacramento last night. So this is a danger time, because if you look at the schedule that's coming up, they got the Bucks on tomorrow night, and then they got the Celtics coming up on Saturday, and the schedule doesn't really get much easier after that. This homestand is full of teams that are really, really good. So, look, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the Pelicans. We'll probably talk more about them on Friday. But I'm just telling you, now is the time. If you're a Pels fan, you might be getting the shakes just a little bit. We talked about those odds. They have not changed after the loss, and they're not going to change back and forth probably for another couple weeks. But there's a reason why they're plus 7,000. We talked about it. I still think they're a value. But, man, we're going to learn a lot about this team as they go forward. Let's get into why many of you came here and talk about the New Orleans Saints. Before we get to Ryan Ramczyk, I do want to take a second to talk about 2 specific rules changes that were approved this week that there was a whole lot of uproar about. Again, you want to comment on that? Feel free to get in the comment stream. I have one in the queue already that I'm going to bring up in just a minute. But you look at the rules changes, and number one, and I talked about this on a short yesterday. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find it. You can find it on Facebook and TikTok as well. I dropped a short talking about the hip drop tackle. Everyone was making a big deal about it. And I'm like, this is kind of dumb when I first started. But then I started doing some research on it. You know, my son calls me in an uproar. Stuff, my son says, how this is going to ruin the game. But he's not the only one. There were so many people out there all over social media yesterday saying how getting rid of the hip drop tackle is going to ruin the game of football. Just put flags on them. So I said, well, let me do some research and see what people think. Obviously, defensive players hate it, okay? But let's talk about facts. So an NFL executive went through and figured out how many hip drop tackles there were last year. And there were approximately 230 of those tackles last year. 230 tackles. That is less than 1 per game. There are 272 regular season games. That's less than 1 hip drop tackle per game. Even more, approximately 39,000 tackles are made every year in the NFL. We're talking about less than 0.6% of all tackles. We're ruining the game. You want to talk about overreaction Wednesday, I guess now? I'd say that's an overreaction because in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that big of a deal. in my opinion. Now, you may have different opinions, and I get it, and I understand why you talk about ruining the game. But a lot of times, the rules changes that they make, it just is what it is. And then there's the kickoff rule, and Ryan Shano says here, he watched the XFL last year. The new kickoff rule is going to be great. No concussions and more actions. And here's one where I also went into it thinking, because I did watch the XFL, and I'm like, I don't know that I like this rule or not. And I was thinking that I didn't like it, but the more I listen to players, the more I listen to coaches, I do think it's going to be good for the league. And in case you don't know what it is, it's too involved to go through the entire thing. But basically, what happens is the kicker has to kick it between the 20 and the goal line. The defenders line up on the opponent's 40. They can't leave until the ball is kicked. The ball is kicked, or is it received? The ball is kicked. They can take off. But either way, the other guys, the guys defending the kick returner, they're going to be on the 35. So there's just a 5-yard gap. A 5-yard gap. So you're talking about less running at you, less concussions. It is going to change a lot of things. And I think it's going to be good for the league. I think it's going to be good. The only thing I don't like, it will change the ambush. You no longer can just do an onside kick just to do one. It has to be the fourth quarter. You have to be trailing, and you have to declare that you're going to do an onside kick. Adam Lane has a question. Who will the Saints use primarily for the new kickoff rule? Fresh face on the way, you think are already in-house. Look, one thing about the new kickoff rule is, and this is what I was hearing yesterday, it will free up. You can probably use your stars, like they were talking about the Dolphins, potentially putting Tyreek Hill back there, because there's a much lesser chance now of injury. The full force of people running up the field 70 yards, it's not the same anymore. So I do think that it will allow for more stars to be able to return kicks. We'll see. I think that's going to be a big deal. Breaking, Spencer says the Panthers are signing Jadeveon Clowney. Is that a big deal? Jadeveon Clowney has had his issues for sure. We'll see. But that's breaking news here on the Dattitude podcast. Let's get to Dennis Allen. I know we talked about the rules changes. First, I obviously want to talk about Ryan Ramczyk is the big deal. I'm going to set this up with last week or a couple weeks ago when Dennis Allen was talking. He sounded confident about where Ryan Ramczyk was in his recovery. And it sounded like, okay, he's going to be ready, maybe for offseason stuff. Now it's a completely different ballgame. He just took a pay cut last week, which is a good thing for the Saints. It freed up some money. The problem is it's looking more and more like not only will he not be ready for any of the OTAs, but he might not be ready for training camp. And when you're talking about a 29-year-old that has had 2 years now of injury problems and really is the staple of your offensive line or has been since Teron Armstead left, it's a problem. Chris Frank says the entire team is an issue. We give up draft picks and have no money to spend with our GM. This year is going to be extremely rough. Man, Matt's saying we're doomed. Maybe it isn't too early to think about next year. I don't know that I feel that bad about it, but obviously it's a different story now. You see the O-line on the left there is a huge problem because it is a huge problem. That being said, I want to get to some of these clips, and I want you to listen to how Dennis Allen talks about Ryan Ramczyk here. He sets it up, and you can read through the tea leaves and see that he is truly worried. I mean, this is no joke. Like, even he's worried now. And if Ryan Ramczyk plays, we'll talk about the repercussions on the other side of this clip.
Yeah, I think it still remains to be seen. You know what I mean? I don't feel. At the combine a few weeks ago, I was feeling a lot better about it, and yet I don't know that I'm seeing as much progress as I was hoping to see, at this point. So I think that still kind of remains to be seen. But here's the cool thing: we got plenty of time. No different than what we were talking about with Cam and being a veteran player and probably not utilizing necessarily a lot during this OTA and mini camp. I would see the same thing, with Ram too. So I think we're just going to have to wait and see how that all goes as we go through, all the off season and as we get into the training camp aspect.
Is that, like, did he just not respond to that surgery as well as you guys had hoped, or what caused you to change a little bit?
Well, I think more of it's just been visiting with him, and he just isn't quite where I was probably hoping he'd be, and really, quite frankly, where he was hoping he'd be. So, but again, there's a long time before we kick the ball off, so I wouldn't jump to any conclusions right now. But we'll see how it goes over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever that is, before we get to the season.
You wouldn't jump to any conclusions. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll jump to them for you. This is insane. You're talking about not jumping to conclusions. Ryan Ramczyk, again, the staple of your line right now, your right tackle, because you have no left tackle at the moment. What does this mean for this team? I mean, we talked about where the offensive line is, and PFF, I saw there are so many numbskulls out there on social media, by the way. So many fans who are just, I think, living pipe dreams about where this team is. Got to go draft a quarterback. Got to go draft a wide receiver. Everybody wants them to draft like some guy who's going to come in and be a speed burner. You can't go draft Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara every year. It's just not going to happen. You've got to go to have any chance to be any good this year or really in the near future. You've got to shore up this offensive line. You potentially could go into the season, especially if Andrus Peat leaves, you could potentially go into the season with no tackle. I'm talking about left tackle and right tackle. You can't play football without a tackle. Derek Carr better have his name on the waiting list at Auctioner because he's going to be spending a lot of time there. They have got to shore up this offensive line. They've got to do it both, I think, in the draft and what's left of free agency. Zach Ewing was on the show this past Monday, and he talked about how there's still $15 to $16 million left cap-wise. They still have some room to play with, and that they may still make moves in free agency. Now, there's not a ton out there, but go and shore up your offensive line with some veterans. But also go into this draft knowing you've got to get one of these top tackles. Joe Alt's not going to make it to you at 14. But there are plenty of guys up there that we talked about on Monday, and obviously we'll talk about as we go moving forward, that there will be. They will be available. I just think that it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. You've got to go tackle. If they do anything else but go tackle in this draft, then, I mean, a lot of you think people should be fired already, but that's where they are. So Ryan Ramczyk it just sounds to me like I wouldn't expect him to be around anytime soon. And I don't want to sound like Derry Downer again, but, I mean, would it shock anyone out there if he's just not ready for the start of the season and well beyond? I mean, let's think about it. He came back and played semi-well, but he missed a lot of time with that knee injury. Knee injuries are no joke for a tackle and for any lineman, really. And so we're going to have to see how it plays out. Again, this is a topic that we'll be talking about no matter whether the Saints draft a tackle or two tackles or whatever, or get another one in free agency. It's definitely something we're going to be talking about. It goes to show you can't have enough depth on your offensive line. Now, you may want to have fun. You may think it's more fun to go out and draft a wide receiver or a running back or a tight end or a quarterback or whatever. Sure, maybe it is more fun. But that's not what this team needs more than anything. No matter whether you hate Derek Carr, think the wide receiver position is super thin. I think it's thin. I don't think it's super thin. It's better now with Cedric Wilson. You may love Brock Bowers. You may want an edge rusher. Whatever it is, there is no question that the number one need for this team and probably the number one and number two need for this team is tackle. Because seriously, in about 3-4 weeks before this draft starts, if Pete leaves, they're not going to have one. They just don't, because Trevor Penning doesn't count. All right. We'll move on from Ryan Ramczyk. Look, I've been as hard as anyone on Dennis Allen, and I know a lot of you, we know how you feel. Again, you want to comment on this, feel free. We'll take, in fact, we have one here. Chris is asking, am I worried about their scouting offensive linemen after the Penning disaster? Absolutely. Of course I am, but that doesn't mean here's why I feel a little bit better about it this year than when Penning was drafted. First of all, they drafted Penning with, I think, the 19th pick. And that year wasn't nearly as chock full of the tackles that are in this year's draft. I think there are literally 4 or 5, maybe even 6 guys that may be ranked a little bit differently among different rankings, different mock drafts. But if you go to PFF and you look at their top 29 players on their board, okay, top 29, 8 of them are tackles. That's a lot different than a few years ago, 2 years ago, 2 years ago when they drafted Penning. I got to think back. Got to use my Shaw math. But so I think that it is different this year. And that's why, yes, I'm worried about their scouting, but I think that you or I could make the pick and they would be okay as long as they take tackle. Devon, I know you said this before. I appreciate you coming back. I love you, my man, but edge rusher, a good quarterback this year, then will help a bad off the man. Edge rusher is not a need right now. It's not a big. It's a need to some degree, but it's way down the list. I mean, assuming Chase Young is going to be ready for opening day, and I think he will be. But regardless, even if he isn't, you got other guys there. You don't have a tackle. I don't get what you guys don't understand about this. You guys who don't want them to pick an offensive lineman in the first round, I don't understand what you don't get about this. You can't play football without a tackle, and the Saints don't have one right now. That's what I don't get. Anyway, want to comment some more on it? Feel free. Again, I've been hard on Dennis Allen, but one thing that I got from actually the past few weeks and listened to closely in this press conference, and I'll play a clip here. He has clearly worked on some of the veterans in the locker room. He and Mickey Loomis, by the way. I know there were a few of them that had a heart-to-heart in there. And obviously, you can't bring in free agents without help from veterans. Tyrann Mathieu obviously got into the process of bringing in Chase Young and maybe some other guys. And, I just think that going forward, him bringing in I'm a little flustered because one of my clips I just realized is missing. So I'm not going to be able to play you that clip. Yep, the clip is gone. Anyway, I was going to play a clip that he talks about the veteran leadership on this team and how Tyrann Mathieu helped bring Chase Young in and how he's leaning on these veterans. And you could tell that reading through the lines that was a key part of what this team had to do. They had to talk to the veteran leadership in this team and get them on board because after again, no question, he lost the locker room, at least towards the end of the season. And the whole Jameis Winston debacle, he lost the locker room. He's got to get these guys back on board, and he's got to have them believing so they can make other potential free agents and people that potentially want to come here, make them believe that they want to come here. Because who do free agents really talk to? Sure, they come in and have dinner with coaches and they come in and have dinner with Mickey Loomis. But really, they're talking to the other players, the players that they know, the players that they trust, the players that they respect. That's who they're talking about. So to hear Allen talking about that made me feel a little bit better about it. We'll see if that plays out that way. Going on to Derek Carr and talking about potentially blocking for him. What does Clint Kubiak think? Again, another topic we talked about with Zach on Monday was about how Clint Kubiak is going to have an effect on this draft. There is no question he's going to have a lot of input, which is another reason why I think they're going to go tackle. But when they were talking about Derek Carr and bringing in Kubiak and what offensive coordinator they might be bringing in here, one thing that they did was they got Derek Carr to talk to his brother David because David Carr worked with his Kubiak's dad, Gary, his last year in Houston. I found this an interesting topic. Let's hear what he has to say about that. And then we're going to hear about Dennis Allen talking about the new offense and how it might look.
The interesting thing is David played for Gary in Houston. And when I talked to Derek initially, and said, hey, look, this is, something I'm looking at. He called his brother, and I was a little nervous that it might not be the, because that was David's last year in Houston. But David was very complimentary of Gary and very complimentary of the scheme, which I think really got Derek excited. But I think Derek probably doesn't get enough credit for the athlete that he is, and I think his athletic skill set will do well in this scheme. I think some of the things that we did kind of later on in the season last year with some of the play action passing game benefited Derek. I thought our passing game kind of came alive a little bit towards the end of the year, and I think that's something that he'll thrive in this new system, new scheme.
And you can tell by what Dennis Allen's saying that he's has some input, obviously, with Kubiak, but I think this is going to be Kubiak's baby, right? And you hear it in this next clip because as he sets it up, talking about the potential new offense, sounds a whole lot like San Francisco 49ers offense right now.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think just from a schematic standpoint, this whole offense is going to be based on, kind of the run, play action game. I mean, obviously, drop back's going to be a part of it, but the main emphasis is going to be able to run the ball effectively, and then be able to create some shot plays in the passing game off the play action. So I think that's something that we can use. I mean, look, with Clint and Rico, John Benton, like these guys have been together before. So I think there's some continuity in terms of getting the program, off the ground and getting started.
They're going to have to get started right away. And look, I guarantee you they're already talking about what potentially they need. I like what he said. This press conference wasn't a lot like the others. Now, granted, we're talking about the offseason, right? So there's not nearly as much pressure right now. So he does sound a little bit different, but I do like a lot of the things that he said here, including one little moment when he was joking about Sean Payton. Someone asked him if Pete Carmichael had said anything about taking Taysom Hill with him to Denver. At least he shows he's got a sense of humor.
Has Pete talked to you about bringing Taysom with them to Denver?
No, that conversation has not been broached. Look, I feel like Sean's tried to get everybody else from the Saints to go to Denver with him. So, yeah, we'll see.
Who knew? Who knew he could laugh? We found out something new every day here on the Dattitude podcast. Look, I think that going forward, this team, if we talked about over and unders, and we like to start talking about that really in May and June, and we'll know more about when the schedule comes out. We know who they're going to play. We just don't know how the schedule is going to be set up. I think this team is going to be one of those teams where I think they need to have the easier part of the schedule front-loaded. I think they need to gain some confidence. They're going to need to feel some things out. So I'm hoping that's where we are right now. I'm hoping this team has the easier part of the schedule first, because if they start out with some of the brutal games they got to play Dallas, they got to play Kansas City. If they start out with those in the early part of the season, Green Bay, might be trouble. Might be trouble. Ryan Chano says, at least we're still not chopping wood. Chopping that wood. We'll get to Spencer in a minute. We'll ask him if he's been chopping any wood. Last thing before we get to the fantasy roundup, another last interesting piece I heard about the press conferences. There's been a lot of talk about who the potential backup quarterback might be, whether it's going to be Nathan Peterman. I know a lot of you think it's going to be Jake Haener. But if you listen to what Dennis Allen said, I think that we're probably going to go at least in a training camp with Peterman having the leg up on that backup quarterback situation. Here's what Dennis Allen said yesterday.
Along those same lines, like when you talk about the opportunity to compete, is this offseason kind of set up for Jake Haener to maybe seize that backup job behind Derek, or might bring?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think as we sit here right now, we let him and Nate Peterman go battle it out and see where we're at. But look, he's another one of these young guys that we felt good about, throughout the preseason last year. It'll be, obviously with the new offensive system, everybody's going to be learning, so everybody's going to kind of be starting, at the same level. And so, yeah, we're excited about watching him go out and compete and see what he can do, and we'll see.
Whenever Dennis Allen starts a sentence with, yeah, look. I mean, Peyton used to do that all the time. Yeah, look. It's like playing poker. You can always, he's got to tell. And it's a question that he doesn't want to answer because you can expect BS to come out of his mouth. Every time I'm not joking. And I need to go, maybe for next week, I'm going to have I'll go through and say, must have said, yeah, look, like 20 times. And everything he said after that was coach speak. There were a couple of moments in this press conference, like the Ramczyk stuff. I actually thought he was way more straightforward than anyone from the Saints ever is. He's probably going to get a scolding for that, by the way, because that was on a lot of social media posts. Ian Rappaport talked about it yesterday on social media as well. But whenever he says, yeah, look, just expect BS to come out of his mouth after that. Anyway, I think it's going to be Nathan Peterman as the backup quarterback. Not that it really matters, because if Derek Carr gets hurt, I mean, what? Then what? All right, before we get to Spencer, I got one more thing. Jeff says he was thinking the same thing. You know, it's kind of funny, but it's kind of not at the same time. Jacques says, yeah, look, and yet. Oh, he does say that. He said, look, he inspires little confidence that he can lead a team to the postseason. I'd like to say I disagree with you, man, but I don't think I can. Let's see what Spence thinks. It's just about time for the fantasy roundup, but you chopping wood back there?
Oh, man. Yeah, in these dynasty leagues, man, chop wood year round. So, yeah.
Chopping
Probably not
wood.
as much as Dennis Allen, though.
Oh, man. Oh, I can't go through another season of chopping wood. So.
Yeah, let's
All
hope he doesn't bring that up again.
We're going to talk about football. We're going to come back to football in just a minute. In fact, you know what? Let's just start with football while we're here. So we're going to get into some draft odds for a couple players here. And we're going to start off with who will draft J.J. McCarthy. It is insane to me that this guy is going to go as high as it looks like he's going to go. I don't get it at all. I'm not asking you to explain it to me, but you see these odds on the screen. It's looking like the Vikings, they don't want to re-sign Kirk Cousins, but they're going to go out and get J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, J.J. McCarthy's stock is skyrocketing. He's by far the biggest riser among any of these quarterbacks. It's looking like he might now go above Drake May. I know that sounds crazy, but, I mean, the Patriots and the Commanders in the mix for J.J. McCarthy. Just imagine if the Commanders take J.J. McCarthy over Jaden Daniels. That will, to me, make them the biggest laughingstock in the NFL. We'll see. I still think the Vikings will probably get him. I think that would be a great landing spot for him with all the weapons the Vikings have. So that's what I'm thinking.
Good luck
but
with that, Vikings.
Never know with Washington.
Yeah, if the Vikings draft J.J. McCarthy, I've been talking about how good I think the North is going to be, the NFC North. My opinion will change a little bit because I think the Vikings, I will go grab their under, whatever it is, if they draft J.J. McCarthy. All right, LSU Pro Day today. How about Jaden Daniels? His stock is pretty much staying on par, pretty much level. Looks like the Commanders had the best shot to get him. Maybe the Patriots, although it's been rumored that he doesn't want to go there.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say he's going to get drafted either second or third. I don't think there's any way he goes past third, because if the Patriots don't want him, they'll just trade out, and a team like the Vikings, who are next up there on the odds chart, will probably swoop up to get Jaden Daniels. Just imagine that. Jaden Daniels to the Vikings. The NFC North would be freaking loaded at that point. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love, and the Lions with Jared Goff and all those weapons. That would be scary if Jaden Daniels goes to Minnesota. I'm thinking he gets stuck, though, with either Washington or New England.
By the way, speaking of the NFC North and the Lions, Josh Reynolds signed with the Broncos. So right. Sean Payton's got himself a new weapon. All right, let's talk about baseball for just a minute as we shift gears just a little bit here on the Fantasy Roundup. We're talking about baseball. Tomorrow is opening day. You're leading into my extra point of the day. We're going to talk about sleepers at pitchers, infielders, and outfielders. I love your sleeper pitcher list. I can't wait to get to a couple of the others because I got a couple of qualms with some of them. But you look at the sleeper pitchers on this list, and I especially like Kyle Harrison. I think he could be a true sleeper. I think that's a guy that's getting underdrafted in lots of places. But I think you got a good list here. I did get Imanaga in one league this year, so we'll see how that goes. Of course, wearing my Cub shirt. I got to get at least one Cub here and there.
Yeah, I got a couple Cubs on this list. Yeah, Imanaga is one of them. I think he's poised for a good year. Guys coming over from Japan and Korea have had a pretty good track record here the past few years, and so I think he keeps that trend going. The one I'm probably most excited about on this list is Cole Reagans, man. This kid has nasty stuff. He flashed in the second half last year with the Royals, and I think that carries over. The Royals should be an improved team this year, and Reagans looks like a guy that has ace potential, and so I think for this year, I don't think he'll be quite a top 10 pitcher, but I think top 20 is realistic, and you can get him usually in like the 8th or 9th round of drafts.
All right, let's talk about infielders, and you got Bryson Stott at the top of this list. I got to ask you, though, and I got Giloff in one of my leagues, too. I'm really excited about that young kid, even though Oakland stinks. I think he could have a little bit of a decent season there. Trevor Story is a sleeper?
Yeah, his stock's really dropped. I mean, he's somebody, I know he's been hurt a lot, but he's a guy that used to go in the top 4 or 5 rounds, and now you can get him basically for free at the end of these things, like the 14th, 15th round, and so to me, he's still a worthwhile pick at that point, because with the Red Sox, it's not a bad lineup. They've got a lot of good bats there. Their pitching stinks, but they can hit. And so he'd be batting in the middle of that lineup. If he's healthy, I think he could still be a top 10 shortstop, and you're getting him super late, because I know with the infield, a lot of times it's hard to be elite at all 4 infield spots. I have a league where I waited on infield or waited on shortstop and ended up with Story, and I actually felt pretty good about it. Notice I was like, man, he goes really late in these drafts, and to me, it's worth taking a shot on.
Josh Naylor is an interesting sleeper as well, because you're talking about a team that just can't hit the ball. And so he's going to have to come through. They're going to be counting on him to do so. And so we'll see if his bat heats up.
Yeah, he had 97 RBIs last year and missed like 40 games. If he'd have played all the games, he'd have had probably like 120 RBIs. And that's in what was not a good lineup. So if the lineup is a little better this year, he's a guy that could really be someone that's with first base. You just want a guy that's like 30 bombs, 100 plus RBIs, and he steals a few bases. That's something most first basemen don't do. So to me, he's someone that's getting very slept on, because he's not in that great of a lineup, but he's got the tools to be a potentially elite fantasy producer.
All right, let's finish off the fantasy roundup. We're going to talk about the outfielders and your sleeper outfielders. Also an interesting list. I really like Jordan Walker here. I think that he could be a breakout, and then everybody loves Churio. I think he's a little overhyped, so I don't know that he necessarily belongs in the sleeper category, although I love him. I think he's going to be a great player. The one I want to ask you about is Starling Marte. I mean, he's getting a little long in the tooth. What do you like about him that makes him a sleeper?
For sure. It's similar to Trevor Story in that he's someone that I think could still deliver 2020 production, and you can get him super late because everyone hates on the Mets, and I think the Mets could be a little better this year. They've still got some pretty good batters. He'll still be their leadoff hitter, and he's someone that's still capable. He didn't have much power last year, but he only played like half the games and stole 24 bases. So this tells me that even if he's not hitting 20 home runs anymore, even if he only hits 10 to 15, if he's still stealing 30, 40 bases, there's still not a whole lot of guys stealing. I know with the new rules, there's been an uptick in stolen bases, but it's still kind of hard to find reliable stolen base options. So he's more of a play for me in the 5x5 roto leagues. I feel like the Jung-Hoo Lee would be more of my recommendation in points leagues, because he's someone I think's really getting slept on. He'll be the Giants leadoff hitter. That's an improved lineup. And so he's another one of the trend of the Japanese players coming over. I think he's going to have a nice year.
Yeah, I hope you're right about Seiya Suzuki, because obviously the Cubs need him to have a good year to have you need him to have a good year for them to have a good year, I think. So he's a key player, and I like the way he's kind of got adjusted to the American game a little bit. I think it's taken him a little bit of a while, but I do like how he has played at least the last half of last season. He had some injury issues as well. Gabe says his sleeper outfield. I'm not so sure this is a sleeper anymore, Gabe. His ADP is ridiculous for where he is, and it's the Rangers rookie Wyatt Langford, who's going to start in left field against the Cubs tomorrow. And again, this is somebody that I had my eye on, but as soon as he was named the starter, like he just shooting up draft boards to the point where I don't know that I want to take this guy in like with a 5th or 6th round pick, and that's kind of where he's going right now.
Yeah, he went super high in my draft this past weekend. As I took Evan Carter. I got Evan Carter later than Wyatt Langford, and I feel like he's a little more valuable for fantasy because he can run too. I mean, Langford can as well, but I think Carter's more of a 2020 guy where Langford, if everything breaks right, he might hit 30 bombs, but I think being that he's never tasted the majors before, he's going to struggle in the batting average category from jump, I would think. So to me, he's getting a little too much hype. He went before Churio, and I mean, to me, Churio's got more upside, but Churio's kind of getting slept on being on the Brewers. The Brewers are a team that's not getting a lot of love right now. So I feel like because of that, Churio is actually a pretty good value. I got him the other day in the 11th round.
Yeah, I agree. And I will say this. I think Langford's probably more valuable in a 5x5 over a 4x4. And especially I play in 2 leagues. One of them's a 6x6. So obviously his batting average isn't going to hurt you as bad in a league like that. So I think Langford could be better there. But I want to see what he does. I mean, obviously it won't be available, but that's the kind of guy who, if he gets off to a slow start, maybe you buy low on him. Somebody's like willing to dump him. Somebody's, all those owners that are, they can't wait. Okay, he's a bum. He stinks. And May 15th, they're ready to trade him. Maybe that's when you jump on him. So.
Yeah, that's what I did with Jordan Walker last summer. I have him in a keeper league, and he got dumped in like June, so I picked him up and kept him for this season. So I'm hoping he can take that next step. I think he can. Cardinals are another team that's kind of in the just not trending in the right direction, but I think he's one of their bright spots, and they've still got some good bats. So I feel like he's gonna have a breakout year this year.
Are you surprised they sent Victor Scott down?
They had to bring him back because Dylan Carlson got hurt. So, yeah, it'll be exciting to see what he can do. That dude stole 90 bases in the minors last year. So, yeah, Victor Scott, for those needing a deep sleeper, stolen base potential stud, go get Victor Scott.
I think he could. I mean, if he gets a chance, I mean, you don't want him to be like Billy Hamilton and hit 180. But if he comes out and, like, even hits like 230 and is able to get on base, it has an on-base percentage of like 300 or 310. He's going to swipe bags every time he gets on. So that's somebody to look out for as well. All right, Spence, thanks a lot. Next week, we will talk about maybe looking at the baseball free agent wire right off the bat, because obviously that first week is a little weird. So maybe we'll talk about that and a little bit more football as we get closer to the draft.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds good, Jim.
Thank you, my man. All right, Spencer the Guru. And we're going to wrap up the show today with my extra point. And we're kind of going along the same thing, right? Same theme. It is opening day, and I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about opening day. Now, see, I got my Cubs World Series shirt on here, so I'm going from one extreme to the other, the end of the season. And we called today, instead of the extra point, we're going to call it the extra inning for baseball. Can't you just smell the hot dogs, smell the popcorns? Get your red hots here. I can hear it. I wish I was in Wrigley right now, although they're not playing there this weekend, but that's okay. Good drive to Arlington. I don't think my wife would like that too much. That's where she's coming from. But the things we love and hate about opening day, number one, what we love is that everyone starts 0-0, except for the Dodgers and Padres. Again, I ain't counting that. Opening day is Thursday, tomorrow. Everybody's 0-0, including the Cubs, including the Pittsburgh Pirates. There's hope in Kansas City. There's hope in Anaheim. There's hope even in Minnesota. The Twins could be good again. The Orioles were great last year. Are they going to be good again? Everybody is 0-0, and they have the same chance. Even the New York Mets. They all have the same chance. Hope springs eternal at the end of March, and even your team could be really good this year. They could be the surprise team. They could be the Baltimore Orioles of 2024. What we hate about opening day, really about baseball in general, and they need to fix this. The blackout rule is absolutely absurd. It is ridiculous. If you're a fan of the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros and you stream TV, you can't even watch them. It's ridiculous, especially if you're a fan of the Astros. I just think that, and like for me, when I was looking at it, I didn't realize where the Cubs were starting the season. They started Texas. I can't even watch opening day because they're playing the Rangers. And I got MLB TV, and they're blacked out. There are rumors that this is going to be changed, and baseball really needs to get involved and change this soon because they're losing people every year. More and more young people are flocking away from the game of baseball. The new rules they implemented last year, I thought they were great. I thought they worked out fantastic. Now let your fans see games, especially when you live in a place like New Orleans and you can't watch the Astros. They're 6 hours away. And even worse, you can't watch the Rangers. They're 8 hours away. Got to change these rules. When they change it, they'll make baseball even better than it is today. I'm getting ready, getting hyped. The last couple of years, I think it's been rough ever since COVID, ever since they had the 60-game season. It kind of drove me away from the game. I tried to get back into it last year and did for the most part. But sometimes, man, baseball is just, they've got to figure it out. They're doing a better job. Now, get some things straight, and maybe more people will come back. Got to pay all these ridiculous salaries. We didn't talk about Shohei. You notice that? What's up with that? Maybe we'll bring that up on Friday. We'll see how that goes. All right, I want to thank Spencer the Guru for coming on this afternoon. And I would like to remind you that later on today on the Saints Insider Show, the Saints gang will have reports from Baton Rouge at LSU's Pro Day. Yes, they are at LSU. They have been there all day for the Pro Day, and they're going to have an update on that. That's coming up very soon. A programming note, there will be no show Monday. I'm going to take a day off with the kids, but we will be here this Friday on Good Friday. I'm not taking off Friday. I think it's going to be a morning show this week. We'll see how that goes. I will let you know the time and who the guest is. I've got a guest I'm working on. I have not confirmed it yet, so I don't want to tell you yet. But we will be back here to talk more Saints for sure. We'll probably talk some LSU women's basketball as they get prepared to face UCLA on Saturday in the Elite Eight, looking to get a chance to play Caitlin Clark. You got to beat UCLA first. Iowa has to win their game, but they probably will. All Caitlin Clark does is a win. I'm so sick of it. LSU's got to get in there. They got to be able to beat her. It's going to happen, right? We'll see. We'll talk about that. Maybe Pelicans will review their game against the Bucks on Thursday night. Look ahead to Saturday's game against the Boston Celtics at the Blender as well. A reminder to subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page and click the little bell to receive notifications when we go on the air live. You can subscribe to the podcast as well on Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And find a replay of the show on NOLA.com/sports. That's going to do it. We will see you Friday. Everybody have a great rest of your week. Get outside and enjoy this lovely weather before it gets just dang hot. We'll see you Friday. Peace and love, my friends.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.